Hello, Tarot Masters. This is Marcy with the Tarot Master Studio, and my guest today is Nadia Hadim. Is that correct? Did I say
Halim.
that Hadim?
Yes.
And so she's our next Tarot Master that we're going to talk to today. And Nadia, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Nadia and I both belong to a medium circle, and so I announced that I was doing these videos, and so she was one of my first volunteers. So I'm really, I'm really grateful for her to volunteer and to be interviewed. So Nadia, what was your first interest with the tarot?
So, um, quick summary of my background. I come from a really science-oriented family and a really sciencey background. My parents were all into, education growing up, and there was some, religion sparked here and there, but it was all about, you got to get straight A's in school and do well in math and science and be an engineer. And that's pretty much what I ended up doing, and going through, high school and college. And I never even considered that, the supernatural realm was an actual thing. Like I would be obsessed with storybooks about it, as a kid growing up, but never realized that, hey, that's something that's real and I could connect to it. I always thought that, oh, it's something that maybe some people could do, but I could never do it. So when I moved down to Florida after I joined the military for a few years, I ended up getting into some, like, I guess, strange health issues. Like I became allergic to potato chips, and it was, it was eye opening because I went through every single doctor the military could pay for, and they're all like, "Well, we can't tell you why you're allergic to it, but just stop eating them." It's like, oh, that's awful. Maybe you can tell me what's going on. And so I ended up talking to one of my coworkers at the time. And just out of the blue, she started talking about energies and crystals, and talking about different, I guess, coaches that can help you through whatever sort of abilities you might have, and whatever you need is already inside of you. And this was the first time that I heard someone say that to my face. Coming from the background I had, and teaching health and safety in the military, and in the health and safety department, I figured, oh well, if this nurse believes it, then maybe it's something I should look into. So when I moved to Colorado, I ended up finding, whatever holistic practitioner I could find, and ended up running into um, a group of pagan women who would have a weekly tarot meetup group.
Hmm.
So I joined a bunch of meetup groups, and this one consistently met once a week, and they would use tarot cards and just talk about tarot, and like use the tarot cards to discuss how their lives were going and what things they could manifest. And I was, intrigued. So the first couple of times I showed up, I didn't even have my own tarot deck, so I borrowed someone else's, and I would just sit there and stare at the cards, all these pictures on it, and have absolutely no idea what to do with it because I had no idea how to read tarot, or I guess there were books that came with it, but I would like look at the book and look at the cards, and nothing would come to me.
Hmm.
But I was just so happy to be there because I was with a group of folks who were happy with tarot, and they were talking about their lives. And it was the first time I was in that sort of setting. So I ended up buying my own tarot deck on Amazon and purchasing it. And, I got it, and I started, doing readings there with the group. So once a week we would meet and do tarot readings.
So coming from a science and logical background, and this is a question that I always struggle with, is what we're experiencing, is it, and what the cards are reflecting, is it metaphysical or is it subconscious?
I would say it's a little bit of both. So when going back to my potato chip allergy, when I moved to Colorado and talked to a bunch of different people, I ended up finding a nutritionist who combined science and the metaphysical idea into figuring out what your body needs nutritionally. And I realized, and she helped me realize that, hey, in my potato chip allergy, it's all energy related. It has nothing to do with anything, physical that's wrong with me.
Mm.
So getting energy work would help me out, or just, understanding energy work would help me out. And that's what I decided to pursue with the tarot, and then, seeing a hypnotherapist and just going down that route. So I think when it comes to tarot readings, it's a mixture of both. And it can be emphasized on, the metaphysical on one aspect, or the I guess, the internal intuition side on another aspect or a science aspect. And it just depends on what you want to use the tarot for. It's very, very versatile from the way
Mhm,
I've seen it used and like the way I've used it myself.
mhm. And how do you use the tarot cards for yourself?
So when I use them, like in the past, what I would do is I would, shuffle the deck and place an intention of either myself or the person I'm reading or the situation I want an answer for into the deck as I'm, trying to shuffle them. And I shuffle them in a way where I don't bend them, so it seems like it looks like a disaster when I'm shuffling them. But I kind of use my own feeling, like, hey, does it feel right to, split them in half and mix them this way, or does it feel right to split them in fourths and like mix them together? And whatever gives me a warm, content feeling, I go with. And from there, what I'll do is I'll spread the tarot cards out, and then I'll pull a card here and or there depending upon how I'm feeling as well. Like, hey, does my feeling make me feel warm and happy if I pull these cards? So I'll pull them up and then I'll flip them over. Although recently, what I've been doing is I'll just mix them and just pull cards from the top of the deck, which is something that I know a lot of people are used to seeing. So I think it just took me a while to become comfortable with that idea and just using my intuition to realize that regardless of what the image is on the card, whatever the answer is for that situation is going to be in whatever image you see. You'll just have to, or it'll automatically come to you. If you get like a double card, that doesn't mean it's a bad card. It just means that whatever you're thinking of, it just happened to show up in that card. Or if you pull that card because it, just happened to be in a deck, whatever's going on will manifest in that card and speak to you, regardless of what the situation is. So,
Mhm. Is there a particular deck that you always use, or do you have a collection of decks and you kind of feel like, oh, I think I'll use this deck for this instance, or I think that deck is going to work better, or how do you how do you do how do you do it?
I've got about 10 decks so far. I went through a phase where I bought a bunch of decks, and pretty much the same way I would look on Amazon and see what spoke to me. There was one that I got from that tarot group as like a door prize winning event that I really liked. I guess it was the Marseille, one of the Marseille
Hmm.
decks,
Hmm.
which a lot of people don't like them because all they are just, symbols, and there's like nothing else in the deck. It's there aren't that many pictures, and if there
Hmm.
are words, they're in French, and I can't speak French, and they're red and blue colors, and
Hmm.
maybe some gold, but nothing else. But for the
Have,
most part,
I have the Marseille deck here.
oh wow, that's even, yep. Yes, yes, just like that. Yep.
Hmm.
And then
There. Oh, go ahead.
the first few years I was using it, I didn't even know it was called a Marseille deck because I tried to look it up online, and it was it wasn't until most recently that a friend told me, he's like, hey, that's a Marseille deck. It's like, oh. But for that one, I would just look at it and just use the general ideas of what, a pentacle would mean or a wand would mean. And I don't even regularly remember what each of those classes of symbols mean. I kind of just look at the pictures and be like, hey, what's the first idea that pops into my head?
Hmm.
So I think the hardest thing coming from the science background was to trust that the first idea that popped into my head was something I should run with. Because I was always be like, oh, that's insane. Like, why would I even think of that as being, something that I should consider, regardless of what the idea was. But
Hmm.
the hard part is just letting go and being like, hey, whatever that idea is, even if it's, not even close to what's going on, it might have a shade of the truth, in there. So you should still go with it.
Hmm. There's this really good documentary on Amazon Prime called Terology. I think it's called Terology. Um, do you know of it?
I do not know.
It's really good. It was filmed in 2013,
Okay.
and I saw it a few years ago. I just happened to come upon it, I think on Showtime or something. And then just maybe about a month ago or 6 weeks ago, I was flipping through Prime. Oh, there's that documentary again. I'll just check it out again. And the main, I'll say character, but the person who is the subject of the documentary, he's an artist from, I think, Ecuador. either Ecuador or Colombia, but I think Ecuador. And he's an artist who lives in New York, and he reads the tarot using the Marseille deck, but he reads it in a way that he's critiquing.
Mm.
And he doesn't believe in the metaphysical aspects and the symbologies and stuff like that. But he does read them as a critic, as an art critic, but he comes to the same conclusion. And so and he does readings for people.
Mm.
And he'll sit in a cafe and just sit there for hours and gives free readings. So he's basically doing the same thing, but he's coming at it from a different angle. And that's why I'm always, I don't say struggling with the question, but always asking the question, is this metaphysical or is it subconscious? Because sometimes when I read, I just see the picture, you know, the story, it just it's right there. Then other times I'm struggling and I'm trying to figure out, why am I struggling? Or why did it come to me so quickly? But I think that's just my left analytical brain just having a hard time shutting that off, and it just kind of overrides everything. You know, to be metaphysical, you just have to trust. You just have to let things
Right, right.
go and trust. And that's so difficult.
Yeah, I think when it comes to tarot, we are our own barriers. Like tarot's there, and like you said, that's a perfect example of someone who doesn't believe in the metaphysical, but can still use tarot to get to the same conclusions. And I think the
Mhm,
way the tarot is designed, it's just a tool,
mhm,
It's almost like, using a graphing calculator or one of those advanced calculators in
mhm,
math or science. Like you punch in the numbers, it'll get you the answer. Yeah. You can always do it by hand and get the same thing, but that requires more, I guess, talent. Whereas,
mhm,
you can be the psychic medium and then, get to the same conclusions the tarot's saying, but it requires, more talent and more practice. Whereas if you do the tarot cards, you can, if you do them correctly and you just, let it flow, you'll get to the exact same conclusion with a lot less effort. So
mhm,
I think it's almost like it's one of the best stepping stones out there for anyone who's wanting to develop their own intuition. You start using the tarot deck from like a more metaphysical standpoint, and even if you don't believe it, just start pulling cards and like trust that whatever first comes to you is, related to whatever you're asking for. And as you get better at it,
mhm,
hopefully you'll develop your own intuitive abilities. So,
mhm,
so that's the
mhm,
way like I concluded that tarot works, because I never officially took any classes in how to read tarot. I kind of just, did it with the ladies in the group as they were running through their own scenarios and doing the different layouts. And then sometimes I pull cards on my own or with friends and look at situations from that standpoint. And yeah, I can get some pretty unique answers. And it all depends on the question you ask. Sometimes it's hard to figure out what questions to ask as well.
mhm, mhm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it all comes back to, hey, if you're working on your intuitive abilities, or if you don't think you have any, the tarot will still work for you.
Mhm,
So that's
mhm.
really nice about it.
I have a hard time reading for myself, just to throw down the cards and, oh, there's the answer. I really have to kind of split myself kind of put myself in a split personality, and I have to write it out. And and the language that I use when I write would be that as I'm speaking to a client, an actual client, and not to myself.
Mhm.
And I've tried so many other ways to just be able to come to a conclusion. And if I just can't. So I somehow along the way I discovered to put myself in a third person scenario and kind of be my own client in a split personality situation and write it out and then read it back. Then it makes sense. But really, I'm kind of lazy. That's just a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Yes, yes.
All right, I just call up a girlfriend and say, "Hey, can you pull some cards for me?" So sometimes we should not be so lazy. We should
I
actually do
agree.
the work. So when you get a new deck, is there any kind of ritual that you do with it? Do you some people sleep with their deck, some people lay it out in the sun and the moon, and what do you do?
Mine is, based off of laziness, but when I get a new deck, it just hangs out in my library room. It just hangs out there for a few weeks or months, and then I won't even open the package. And once I get in there and open the package, then I'll use it for a little bit and put it in my storage box. Which here, let me pull my storage box real quick so I can show you all my tarot decks.
Mhm.
So I got one of these cardboard boxes from Michael.
Mm-hmm. The God is within her, she will not fall. Ooh, that's nice. Psalm 46:5. That's great.
Yep. See, one of my most recent acquisitions is an oracle deck called the Abandoned Oracle. It's
Oh.
fairly graphic. Has a very, I guess, Halloweenish theme.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine told me about it, and it's not really available anywhere except for the creator's website. So the man who made it has been, doodling for years, and he's just,
Oh, wow.
made like an oracle deck out of it. And they're just, so I've transitioned a little bit to oracle cards, which are a little bit different from tarot in that, there's more graphic pictures. And I don't even use the book for these. I kind of just look at the photo and try and think of what it means. And at least right now, like my thoughts are very simple, like, oh, A plus B equals C or something, But so that's an example of one of my decks. And then, of course, I have the universal weight deck because you can't, not have one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I've got an Archangel Oracle deck because I found out recently that some of the guides I've been talking to are angels, because I'm really bad with labels. Like, since I haven't been trained specifically, like I don't like distinguish between, a psychic or a medium or, an angel reader. I kind of just, gave them generic names like, helpers.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if you want to do readings for people, a lot of people expect that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then this is one of my favorite ones, the Crystal Wisdom Healing Oracle deck, because I'm very, very into rocks and minerals. So I got this one, and I use it to, not to determine what sort of rocks people need, but kind of just how minerals can help them along on their journey. And this one I just thought was hilarious, the Halloween tarot deck. Pumpkins for, the pentacles, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It's some of the same ideas still.
Yeah.
So I would say it just depends on the person where they are. I've done the Rider Waite deck or Universal Waite deck for people who, I guess, have more complicated energies.
Mm-hmm.
And the Marseille deck, I feel like, is a lot more versatile. So I feel like you can use it for a wide variety of folks, but I personally would use it for someone who has a really complex situation going on, because that way I'm not limited by pictures
Mm-hmm.
and like other designs. And then the same individual who created that graphic oracle deck also has a Deviant Moon tarot deck.
Mm-hmm.
So I've used this one before, but those two decks I'd only use for folks who are, not afraid of things that go bump in the night, because the last thing you want is to show like, weird pictures with knives and like, etc.
Yeah.
to people. But yeah, like and then I do have the past life oracle deck. In case individuals are wanting to think about their past lives. And I think it affects a lot of people as well, but sometimes I feel like, at least with people nowadays, it helps to like address their current life and then, go back into the past.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if they're connected, it just, it's kind of like organizing a closet. Like you can't just, start like in the back if there's all the stuff in the front that's, going to fall on you.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yep. And
Uh-huh.
here's the Marseille deck.
Yep.
So it doesn't even have a box, but so
Mm-hmm.
just super, super simple.
Yep.
You just gotta go with whatever comes to you. And then something else I found that isn't really an oracle deck, but it was on sale at Macy's randomly. It's a dream decoder.
Oh, okay.
So it was like $3 because it was on sale, and it's just a bunch of cards that you can pull, and it talks about things in your dream. And I've used this for myself because I'm terrible at remembering dreams and what they mean. Like
Mhm.
once I kind of have an idea of what happened in my dream, I can like associate it with different things. But this one, gives me different viewpoints. Like, here's an example of social media in your dream. And it
Ah,
talks a little bit about social media, and it's just right on the back of the card. So I feel like this could almost be used as like an oracle deck. So I've heard of people using just regular playing cards,
mhm,
like the hearts and the spades and whatnot as
mhm,
tarot decks. And I think honestly, you can use any sort of card stock as a tarot deck because
mhm,
at the end of the day, you're just using it as a tool to, I guess, align either your intuition or the metaphysical side to see a conclusion. And
mhm,
of course, depending upon who you are or who the person you're reading for is, it's not written in stone. It's just, like a tool. It's like a compass pointing a certain way.
mhm.
And it'll change depending upon what the person does. And it can even change just with the readings. Like, hey, you let the person know, and now the person's like, oh, well, I don't want that to happen. And suddenly, that's not
Yeah.
going to happen. So it's all like a part of what's going on. So I like using it at least, in Colorado, when I was there with the ladies group, I noticed that most of them use tarot more of like a tool to help them with whatever weird situations were going on in their life. Like, hey, they've got a family and their kids are all teens and they're not listening. So they're pulling cards about the situations like, oh, well, they're not going to listen until they're 25. So I've got another decade of dealing with this. So it's almost like more of a counseling tool, which I really like,
Mhm, mhm.
And I
Yeah.
know people like get afraid of tarot, but it's like I said, it's a tool and it depends on what you use it for. If you're using it to try and help express yourself or help someone else express their feelings, and I don't think of it as like, a terrible thing. I think it's a great asset at that point.
Mhm, mhm, yeah. You bring up, a really good point about free will. I mean, you didn't say it, but you're, um, insinuating the aspect of free will. And I think that's so important that people need to understand that. Because I've been asked by folks, "Oh, so you're a psychic?" So, well, I can't really tell the future. If I could, I would not be driving a 2008 Ford Taurus.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you that way.
We wouldn't have day jobs where we, make a steady amount of money. Do
Exactly.
something else.
Exactly. But yes, it is a counseling tool. Um, and it's not about telling somebody what they should do when and blah blah blah. This is what's happening right now. You have the choice to either continue on this path or shifting it. It's all up to you, client. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because that is so important. And especially right now, I feel like we're going through a tarot slash metaphysical, um, I don't know if renaissance is the right word, but I think because of the pandemic and people have been stuck inside and they're just discovering new things. And it just seems like there's more and more people are going towards divination tools.
Right, right. And like not understanding what this is for. And it's fine. Like you just have to keep an open mind when you get, readings and messages like, hey,
Mhm,
if it's not something that you feel like it resonates with you, it doesn't have to be a warm fuzzy feeling. If you
mhm,
don't think it applies to you at all, you don't have to
mhm.
embrace it. But if you hear it
Exactly.
from 5 or 6 other people, then maybe you should think about it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, like I try and tell people, it's almost like in math where you've got the calculus thing going on, you got a weird curve, and you take something called a derivative, which is like the slope of that curve, but it's only the slope at one certain point. It doesn't take into account all the other waves and stuff. So
Mhm,
that's what tarot does. It's just It gives you a point, you give it a point in time, and it tells you what's going on at that point, but that doesn't mean that things aren't going to change or shift or, go a different way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Beautifully said. And I really like that you're bringing in again that the logic, the science, the math into this realm that is just all intuitive based. I love that.
Yes, yes. So, yeah, when I moved to Colorado, one of the other meetup groups I joined up was related more towards, I guess, not necessarily intuition, but it was a lot more science based. It was one of the hemisync offshoot groups. So
Hmm,
the idea of hemisync is that there's an organization out there called the Monroe Institute. I think they're located in like Tennessee.
okay.
And the individual who first started up the institute was like, people have a hard time, meditating and getting into stages of consciousness easily. So he figured out a way to get people to do it by, using music and sound. So you would
Hmm.
wear headphones, and like one ear would get a certain type of tonal vibration and the other ear would get a different one. And they proved scientifically using MRI results and CAT scans that, hey, if you use this type of music, your brain waves, suddenly align to where they should be. And you can get into the different stages of consciousness, which I think they've gone up to like 21 and beyond, depending upon the type of music that they're listening to.
Wow.
And it's a national organization, and there's like little like subgroups everywhere. Just they're a little expensive if you want to go and do like one of their classes in person. I think it's between $1,000 to $2,000 per class for a week.
Mhm.
But they had a local group out in Colorado, and I just showed up, and we all listened to the same music. We all had different iPods going on, and then there was another teacher associated with that group who wasn't part of the Monroe Institute, but he had his own series of lectures and trainings based off of soul retrievals in the afterlife, which was a giant leap for me, coming from a science background. I was like, oh, ghosts are real. It's like, oh, ghosts get lost in the afterlife. It's like, oh, we can go get them. Like, these were different stages of like, my shock, but I was like, you know what? He's here. It's all free. Might
Mhm.
as well show up to it. And yeah, and he was a science and engineer by trade, so that's what really got me into it. It's like, hey, it took him like 10 to 15 years to believe it, and then even longer for him to be able to like see images while he was meditating, because he couldn't see images period while he was meditating. I think it's partially because of his science background. So
Mhm.
talking to him, his name's Bruce Moen. He's passed away recently, but still has a series of books and like trainings out there. But yeah, like I went to two or three of his classes out in Colorado, and yeah, ended up going through the different techniques of meditation with him, and how
Mhm.
to like communicate with guides and whatnot, which I think his training is very, very different from what anyone else is really doing in terms of mediumship and psychic work and other sorts of communicating with, I guess, other helpers. He called them helpers. He just gave them a general term.
Mhm.
So yeah, so coming from that aspect, and because he had a science background, it's like, okay, you know what? He's got a science background. I can jump on that bandwagon and go with it.
Yep.
So I actually ended up doing that prior to really getting into tarot, and I think that's really helped me out a lot, because I know a lot of people, start with tarot and they have trouble communicating with their guides and meditating and all these other aspects. But I think I did it, in a haphazard fashion, but it worked out, in the end when it all combined together. But
Mhm.
yeah, there's definite connections between science and what tarot is, and I think it's just that science hasn't caught up to it yet, in a way.
Mhm.
So,
I can't remember who said this, but I think it was on a Marvel superhero movie that magic is science that we don't know yet,
yes,
something like
yes,
that.
yeah. Marvel, there's a book called The Necromancer. It was made back in the 1970s. And the same thing in there is like, magic is what science hasn't caught up to yet, and someday it'll catch up.
Hmm. Hmm. Um, so there's this YouTuber. Her name is Diane, and her channel is Diane's Tarot, and she goes into all sorts of different aspects about um, tarot, and then angels, and she channels the the Rock Collective. So it's a higher conscious collective, and her channel she has different membership levels. So she has videos that are free that she posts on YouTube, but then she has a couple of membership levels, and her more expensive is $15 a month, but she gives you so many different lessons, and she touches on other divination tools, astrology, and the pendulum work, and palmistry, and she'll have other people talking about those different divination tools. So if you're ever interested in finding somebody, I highly recommend Diane's tarot.
Okay, yes, for sure. I'll definitely look her up on YouTube and
And
start
and
watching her free stuff. And
and she's another one who comes from a very analytical background. She was a director for I believe senior living facility.
okay, yeah, yeah.
So in a very analytical, very process oriented, very left brained, but her entire life has always been part way in this world and part way out, multidimensional.
Yes, yes.
So anyways, I just think that you might like her, you might enjoy her content. So what advice do you give to people who are just starting out in tarot, or are kind of shy about it and may not want to do it because they're not sure, or some either religious hangups or whatever other hangups that they may have?
I would say, like with everything, just keep an open mind. If you go to a restaurant and get sushi and it's awful, like don't be like, I hate fish and I will never eat fish again. You know, I think that's the mindset people have when it comes to, anything that's, metaphysical and they're not sure about it. Because there are a lot of, I guess, different people and organizations out there that are just in it for the money and they're not, genuine. And it's easy to get caught up in them because their marketing is so much better than maybe
Mhm.
some individuals who are really good but don't know how to like display it out to the world. So just keep an open mind that, hey, this is just a tool. It's like the calculator, just have it in your back pocket or, somewhere in the house. And if it doesn't work out one day, try it again and, keep on trying it and go out, and maybe interact with people who have a little bit more experience or are just as curious as you are and keep on doing it. And you'll eventually, feel comfortable with it to the point where, hey, this is my tarot deck and I can use it however I want, almost like a pencil. It's like, oh yeah, this
Mhm.
pencil suddenly fits right in my hand and I can make the little sketches that I want to make and
Mhm.
the little figures that I want to make. So it's not about, being terrified of what, hey, I'm going to use it to manifest a demon or something. It's not, it's not like it's a tool and you use it for whatever you want to use it for. It's not
Mhm.
automatically going to do something if you don't want it to do that. It's like, a pencil. You're not going to suddenly accidentally stab yourself in the eye with it. You've got to, intentionally do it.
Right.
Think of it like a tool. And just, like any tool, just, get used to it and try it out and see YouTube videos and read
Mhm.
things online about it. And then, start out, real short, maybe work with different types of, fuzzy animals or, birds and whatnot. And get comfortable with it and then start doing, other, I guess, personal situations like, easy decisions like what should I make or eat for dinner? That's what the tarots tell you. Like I like using it for, shopping or decisions on like what to eat and, like major life decisions. Like, I don't know, like I can pull tarot on it, but I'm also still very analytical. So I like using my own, logic behind that as well. It's like, oh, you can use it for giving you insight on whether or not you should take a job, but you also have other tools there at your disposal to help you make those decisions too.
Mhm.
So yeah, I would say that if anything, it can help you with de-stressing yourself because like if you're panicking over a decision to make and you don't know what to do at all and it's just stressing you out, if you just use the tarot and use it as like a tool that's a bit more unbiased than you are, then maybe it'll relieve some of that stress. And sometimes just that stress, de-stressing can help you a lot in any situation.
Mhm. Mhm. Do you do any readings for people? I mean, can people call you up and you'll
Yes.
do? Okay, wonderful. I would love to share your information in the description below. So
Okay.
before we hang up, I'll grab your information and put it in the description. And do you have any final words for anybody? For everybody, I should.
I would just say, if you're just starting out, or even if you've been doing tarot for a long time, just have fun with it. Just do what you think makes you feel happy, and continue on doing it, and using the tarot and put that intention in there that it's for your greatest and highest good, and you want the best benefits out of it, and you really can't go wrong with that. you know and it'll just bring you a lot of happiness and joy in your life, and then reduce the level of stress. And sometimes it's all we need. Just think of it as a tool, and the tool's there to help you out however you want it to help you out. So it's nothing to be afraid of. If you haven't used it before, and if you aren't using it enough, then try and let go of some of that laziness, which I know I'm also guilty of, and just use it just to see what's going on in your situation, or in the situations of others, and maybe use it as like an unbiased tool to help you out.
All right. Thank you so much, Nadia, for spending this time with us. And Tarot Masters, thank you so much for hanging out with us. And if you like this video, please like, share, subscribe. And until next time, keep practicing. Thank you so much.